Efraim, Palvanow, not related, no relation to Nation of Ephraim, just a coincidence.
Shalom לכולם וברוכים הבאים. It's really good. I'm happy to be here with Rabbi Efraim Palvanow. It took us a long time, but we're here. And hopefully this will be a good shiur about the Geulah mindset, what he discussed in his videos already. So for everyone who have never heard of us, we are from the nation of Ephraim. So we are a group of non-Jewish individuals that thinks or believes and stands with Israel, and we kind of keep the laws of the Torah, not as an Orthodox Jew does, but this and a lot of other things we will discuss in this Zoom. And maybe you can tell us also something about you for the beginning, Efraim.
Sure. Thanks, Alexander. Efraim Palvanow, not related, no relation to Nation of Ephraim, just a coincidence. I'm no coincidences. Yeah, so I'm born in the Soviet Union and spent my early years in Israel, and for almost 30 years here in Toronto, Canada, and loved to learn Torah and became religious when I was in my teens and early adulthood, and I'm involved in education. Actually, my day job is to teach science. I'm the head of the science department at a couple of high schools here. So by day, I'm mostly involved with biology and chemistry and spend my time in a lab. But then also very passionate about sharing Torah with the world. So that's a little bit about me. I've written some books, and I have a popular weekly Parsha newsletter, and a YouTube channel, which really just came out of the pandemic when we couldn't meet in person. So I started putting some of these things on the internet, and I guess it caught on. It resonated with a lot of people. So here we are. And I think you found me the same way, right? Found me online over YouTube, and I believe, and we met, I think, in January when I was in Israel. So thank you for all of your support that you're giving to Israel. We definitely really need it now, and that's how ultimately we're going to bring Geulah, when we can bring the whole world together. Yeah.
So that's correct. We found you on YouTube, and you made really a lot of wonderful videos. And for us, there is no coincidence, but the topics you were explaining from your Jewish perspective and from things from the Talmud and from the Torah, they just kind of fit, in our story, because I think the most famous thing you said was about the 7 years, the 7 years before Moshiach would come.
That's right.
And you said it started in 2018, and then because there's this kind of plague, you said this could be Corona, and now
Right.
Moshiach will come after the Shabbat year. And it's not seen on the picture, but our website is called Zion5777.com, because we said if we should celebrate the Jubilee year, so the 50 years, we counted from kind of the birth of Jerusalem in the Six-Day War, when the Jews conquered Jerusalem. So for us, the Jubilee year was in 5777. So when we start counting, because also we started kind of 2017 with all this movement, our leaders started already 20 years earlier, but it really became kind of a community with serious things in 2017. So, and this is exactly the 7 years.
It follows the pattern, right? Yeah, that was my suggestion, right? Nothing's written in stone, but just looking at what's going on in the world with the pandemic, with the wars, it does fit what the Midrash and what the Talmud would say about the 7 years before Mashiach comes. Yes, it fit quite neatly. And I think we're still on track. We're still on schedule. This would be the last year. We're now, it's hopefully it's coming this year. Yeah.
Yeah. So let us start with a short kind of a quick refresh about the origins of the lost tribes. So there was this famous event, when Ephraim went against his brother Jehudah to throw him from the throne, and God said, "No, you now kind of connect with not Assur, but with Aram, and then he brought all the Assyrians, and they kind of left the country. So you said one time you made a video about the lost tribes, and you said a lot of refugees were there. They fled to Jerusalem to the south. That's correct. And then with the Babylonians, also the southern kingdom of Judah also left its homeland Israel, went to the Babylonian exile. And then after 70 years, they came back. But I think, at least at this point, maybe you can add something to this. We truly believe that I will show a short map of this, so that when the northern tribes were exiled, so they were exiled to, of course, Assyria, but then they kind of spread. And as we see on this map, so the only way they could spread is either to the east, so to India or China. But you also have this mountains, this big mountains in this area. And I think even secular archaeologists or scientists, they said that all the civilization kind of origins in Africa. So this is the normal way of all this kind of different tribes. You see in this graphic, they're called the Saxons, the Franks, the Lombards. So they all kind of different tribes, but in the end, they all depart from Israel. So we're not saying that every single European person is a physical descendant from the tribes, but we definitely think that the biggest part of the lost tribes went to Europe, because Europe has a different culture than Africa, a different culture than Asia, and also from the physical appearance, they really kind of look the same like the Jewish people. When we hear.
Right, so let's clarify a lot of these. Did you want to finish your point?
No, you can.
Okay, good. I just thought maybe you wanted to add something, but yeah, let's just clarify the whole story from the beginning. So there was one unified kingdom of Israel, which was led by King David and then King Solomon, his son. And then after Solomon passed away, the kingdom splits essentially in half, with the southern kingdom called Judah, which was mainly the tribe of Judah, although there were some other tribes. Tribe of Shimon was there, Binyamin was there, because Jerusalem was built half the tribe of Ben on the territory of half the tribe of Benjamin and half the tribe of Judah. And the tribe of Shimon actually didn't really have any contiguous piece of territory. It was kind of interspersed around where Judah was. And then the north, which was called the kingdom of Ephraim. Yeah, of course. And of course, there were Levites and priests all over in the temple and all over. So, and then in the north, you had what became known as the kingdom of Ephraim, because the first king was Yerovam from the tribe of Ephraim. And Ephraim was like the dominant tribe in the north, which had, again, the remaining tribes of the 12. And when the Assyrians destroyed the northern kingdom, we read in Tanakh that many of those people fled south to Judah. So from Ephraim, from Menashe, from Naphtali, from all these other tribes, they actually fled south to. So Jehudah had a large population of all the tribes. And then later the Babylonians destroyed the temple and exiled the Judeans, but they would have exiled most of who was left over. And they went to Babylon for 70 years. And then, of course, the Tanakh describes how the Assyrians had brought other peoples to settle in place. They mixed up different peoples, different cultures, and they had brought foreigners from Assyria to settle in Israel. Now, we say that those foreigners that they brought became the Shomronim, the Samaritans. The Samaritans claim that they're not foreigners, that they were the original Ephraimite tribes that were already there, that were not exiled, that did remain. And they also have a Torah, right? And they write it in the old Hebrew script, and so they're not Jewish, but they're Samaritan. But we do have a lot of shared practices, and the Talmud has a lot of discussion about what are you allowed to do with Samaritans, what you're not allowed to do with Samaritans. So they also claim descent from the Ephraimite tribes. And but what we know for sure is that in Babylon, a lot of these tribes just mixed together, and everybody became known as a Yehudi. We read that in the Purim story in Megillat Esther, in the book of Esther, that it says that Mordechai was a Benjaminite, was a Ish Yamini, but also a Ish Yehudi, because at that point everybody just went by the identity of being a Judean, a Jew. And we see that to this day, where today's Levites and priest Kohanim, they still identify as being Jews, as being Yehudim, although technically they're not, right? Technically, a Levite or a Kohen is not a Yehudi, but everybody became a Yehudi associated with the kingdom of Judah. So then what happened to all the other tribes? Again, different theories. So the simple reading of the Tanakh is that the Assyrians displaced them somewhere to the east, and it mentions different names where they went, along different rivers in the Middle East. It could have been that they went to the further east, maybe to Central Asia, roughly where I was born in Uzbekistan. It could have gone even further, maybe to India. There's people who claim descent from the lost tribes in India, various also Bnei Efraim, Bnei Menashe, maybe even China, maybe even as far as Japan, maybe to Africa. Certain Ethiopian Jews claim descent from the tribe of Dan, and also possible that they went to Europe. If they were trying to escape the Assyrian Empire entirely, escape the persecution of the Assyrians and the Babylonians, then it makes sense that they could have fled to Europe. And so some have pointed out that there are connections between European peoples and names to Torah names, like Saxons. Some have said, oh, Saxon comes from Isaac's son, the sons of Isaac. You know, there's a lot of places in Europe that have Dan in the name, right? Whether it's in Denmark, which literally means land of the Danes or land of the Dans. So is that related to the tribe of Dan? There's the Danube River and the Dnieper River and the Dniester River, and there's so many rivers and places in Europe that have the word Dan in them. And so some say that a big portion of the tribe of Dan went to Europe. Maybe even among the earlier, among the ancient Greeks, they had a tradition that two of their founding figures were Cadmus and Danaus. So are they related to Kedem and Dan, which are very Hebrew Torah-based names? Yeah. So it's definitely possible that some of the tribes went to Europe, and that there are European peoples have some descent from the ancient tribes of Israel. It's possible.
Yeah, because also in the prophets, I think especially in Hosea, who writes a lot about Ephraim, it said he's kind of mixed like a fig cake, you know, with all the nation. Because the main difference between the Jewish people and the tribes that went lost is that the Jews always held their identity, you know, until this day. But the tribes, they kind of lost it because in Hosea 2 or in another translation, Hosea 1, at the end, it says, Lo Ami, you're not my people anymore. This is kind of God gave he divorced his people so that they really kind of became like the nations. And I think it's also in the kind of halachic thing that they said, even if you are from the tribes and you're not officially part of Judah, that we have to treat you like a Noahide, because there's no 100% proof that right. You say you're from the tribes, but we have to kind of treat you like that. And this fits into the prophecy when God really divorced his people. But then it says in the next verse that you shall not be called Lo Ami, but you shall be called sons of the living God. So right. From this and a lot of other prophecies, we see that there will be a time, the end of days, where all the children of God, you know, in Japan or in Australia and all over the world, they were scattered, and but they will come back. Finally, God will in Amos it says no sand is going to the earth. You know, when you I don't know the
Yeah,
English term, but you if you know, so God knows
right,
exactly His people, and He will bring them back. And I think um, today I saw a short of you where you said the Jewish conversion process is much too strict. You know, we should
right.
be more open. And I think this fits into the situation and the time we are right now, because never in the history before so many people really felt this flow to connect to Israel, to connect to the Torah, to
Yeah.
connect to the Jewish people. And I think we have to deal with this, and maybe we can connect this to the second topic, how this kind of now we know about the origins, but how this really how the northern and the southern kingdom, how Ephraim and Judah were separated so far from each other when Judaism and Christianity started to develop until today.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So, Christianity emerges out of Judaism 2,000 years ago. Jesus was a Jew. His disciples were all Jews. Paul, Peter, these are all Jews, right? The founders of the religion essentially were Jewish. The question is, did they even have an intention to start a new religion, or were they really just trying to spread? I mean, you can read in the book of Acts where Paul and James are really talking about spreading Torah to the world, and they're really just talking about the Noahide laws over there. Like, what do we expect Gentiles to fulfill? How much of the Torah do we expect Gentiles to fulfill?
Yes.
And the discussion there is essentially a discussion of fulfilling the Noahide laws, which is perfectly fine. That's what we want the Gentiles to do. So it takes a couple of hundred years for Christianity to separate and to become entirely its own religion and to stop being halachic, to detach itself from halacha and from Torah law and to morph into something else and to blend with Roman myths and Roman culture and Roman practices. Even something like moving the Sabbath to Sunday, right? The Sunday was already a holy day for Rome, at the day of Sol Invictus, the sun, the indomitable sun, right? And Christmas also was the day of celebrating the birth of the indomitable sun. So there's that fusion of Jewish ideas, values, practices with Roman ones, and it becomes less and less Jewish with time. And today we're seeing a reawakening in the Christian world where many Christians want to learn authentic Torah, want to come back to more Jewish practices to the way that Jesus and his disciples would have done it. And that's why you see all kinds of movements, whether it's even just Seventh-day Adventists who keep Shabbat on Saturday and who won't eat pork and shrimp and things like that. You see it in various Hebrew Christian groups and all kinds of, even I would even throw those who call themselves Messianic Jews into that category. Although I think that's a bit of an oxymoron. I don't think you can really be a Messianic Jew. I think if you're a Messianic Jew, you're just a Christian. So, if you believe that Jesus is the Messiah, then that makes you a Christian. Christ being in Greek just means the Messiah, right?
Yeah.
So a Messianic Jew is really a Christian. Yeah.
Messiah thing that also originates only from the Torah, you know. So normally every Jew should be called a Messianic Jew because you should believe in your Messiah, not especially in Jesus, but
Right. Yeah, so I mean, we got to clarify that the Chumash itself, the five books of Moses, do not speak of a Messiah, right? It's not, there's no like law that you have to, like, that there's a mitzvah to believe in the Messiah, right? The Chumash, the five books of Moses don't explicitly mention a Messiah anywhere. Later on, it becomes the Rambam is probably the first Maimonides. The Rambam is Maimonides who lived in the 12th century. He's probably the first to actually codify as a principle of faith that a Jew should believe in the eventual coming of the Messiah. But that wasn't the case in previous generations. I mean, the Talmud has an opinion. There's a Rabbi Hillel who says in the Talmud in Sanhedrin that there's not going to be a Messiah. Like a Jew doesn't have to, according to him, it seems, a Jew doesn't have to necessarily believe in the Messiah. You know, Judaism works perfectly fine without a Messiah. We still have our laws to fulfill. We still have our mitzvot and our halachot. Messiah or not, we're going to be religious and serve God and be God's people. So the Messiah is like a bonus at the end of days. It's not technically necessary for the Torah, and again, the Chumash doesn't mention it. But it seems to me that essentially the Jesus movement began as a group of people who believed he was the Messiah, and that's not unique. Meaning there were people before who were claimed to be the Messiah. Even somebody like Zerubbabel, Hezekiah, even King Hezekiah, one of the last kings of Judah. Zerubbabel after him, and many other figures. Shimon Bar Kochva in the generations right after Jesus in the next century. Bar Kochva was very close to fulfilling what we expect the Messiah to fulfill, including starting to rebuild the third temple. And of course, the dreaded case of Shabtai Tzvi in the 17th century. So there were many other people claiming to be the Messiah, even to this day. Lehavdil, we have the case of Chabad and the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who's was a wonderful rabbi, no doubt, one of the greatest in history. But till this day, he's been gone. He's passed away more than 30 years ago. But there's still a very strong messianic movement around him.
Yes.
And I think you can even see some of the Chabad gets really upset when you compare them to Christianity. But the truth is, you can see a lot of the parallels of how such a movement could emerge. You know, what you saw 2,000 years ago with the Jesus movement, you're seeing now in a small group among the Lubavitchers. It always starts with a small group, though. Again, it took Christianity a couple of hundred years, right?
Yeah.
And so you see how it can happen, where a very charismatic, wise leader, even miracle worker, the Lubavitcher Rebbe certainly worked miracles. I mean, I know people personally who he did miracles for them, incredible things. So you can see how such a person could be turned into a messianic figure, and even after death becomes larger than life and is worshipped as, you know, this grand figure. But to refocus on the question of the nation of Ephraim and where I believe you got the name from, you know, there is this understanding of Christianity playing the role of Ephraim, perhaps at the end of days. And there is a source for it in Tanakh, which is in the book of Jeremiah. Jeremiah says that Az karu notzrim be'ar Ephraim, that the Notzrim will call out of the mountain of Ephraim.
Yes.
And who are the Notzrim? So in modern Hebrew, Notzrim means a Christian. So it's almost like Jeremiah obviously didn't, on the simple level, meaning he didn't mean Christian because there were no Christians at the time of Jeremiah. Obviously, this is, you know, 5 centuries before Jesus, so there were no Christians then. But then he says, Karu Notzrim be'ar Ephraim. So what was he really talking about? Could there be a hidden allusion there when he speaks of these Nazarenes or whoever they are, Notzrim, the guardians, whatever that means?
Yeah, the watchman.
Was he potentially talking about, in secret fashion, alluding to a prophecy at the end of days, that the Notzrim, the Christians, are calling out from the Mount of Ephraim? Is there a connection there? So if you look at the prophecy of Ezekiel, chapter 37, first he sees the vision of the dry bones, and then it ends with God saying, you know, take the stick of Jehudah and take the stick of Ephraim and merge them together and reunite them. And then God says, you know, David will come back and will be a king again for eternity. You know, the Davidic dynasty will be reestablished for eternity. And Jehudah and Ephraim will no longer be divided and will come back and live in peace. So could that be we see that as a reference of Jehudah and the lost tribes coming together, the lost tribes of Israel being finally reunited. Could it be referring to a reconciliation between Jews and Christians at the end of days? I think it's possible. I think it's a possibility because we do know from other sources that talk about Jacob and Esav reconciling at the end of days, right? For the Jewish, in the Jewish mind, Esav represents the Christian world. Esav is Europe. And I had that 5-part series that's on YouTube of understanding Edom, right? That in the 2,000 years ago, by 2,000 years ago, Judaism saw the Roman Empire and the whole Christian European world, not Christian world, but European world as Edom. And then eventually when the Roman Empire became Christian, so anything that was Rome, Christianity, Europe was associated with Esav, with Edom. But there is this prophecy that Yaakov told Esav that one day he would come and be with him in Mount Seir. Esav tells Yaakov, come live with me in my mountain in Mount Seir. And Yaakov says, nah, not yet. I'll come there eventually one day, but not now. And so there's a prophecy there that says, at the end of days, they will come back together. They will reunite. And even where it says, Vayasem lecha shalom, in the priestly blessing, the Baal HaTurim says, shalom is Gematria Esav. The Gematria of the word shalom, the numerical value of the word peace is actually equal to Esav. That there will be peace with Esav, between Yaakov and Esav at the end of days. So we do expect the reconciliation. So do we see that as Jehudah and Ephraim? Do we see that as Yaakov and Esav? Could it be a little bit of both?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's going to happen because as Isaiah says, Ishayahu says the third temple will be an international house of God. Beit Tfilah lechol amim. It'll be a house of prayer for everybody. Everybody is welcome. God says even the most distant Ben Nechar, the most distant foreigner, should come and observe my Sabbath and come to my temple, because the third temple will be an international house of God. So we do need to unite and unify, and the reconciliation will happen one way or another.
So we see it kind of the same way, because when we three that are right now here in Katrin in the Golan Heights, so we were, I think, last year, we visited ancient Shiloh, with the red heifers, because there was all this speaking on the internet, especially the Christians, they would say now the Jews want to build this third temple, and then will be the Antichrist and all the wars and all of that. So we went there and we visited the red heifers. When we were there were 5 cows. So right now I think 3 already disqualified. And when we stood there, there were a family that are responsible for all this thing. They don't only have the cows, they also have the really ancient Shiloh. I don't know if you have ever been there.
No, never been there.
So there is the ancient Shiloh. They kind of found it where they first put the tabernacle, where the Mishkan became from a movable thing. The first time became a stable thing. So, and her father kind of had a vision or something like that he came exactly to this place, and he started digging, and he found the place where the Mishkan was, and
wow.
They digged everything up, and if you see pictures from, I think, 30 years ago or something like that, there was nothing, just nothing. And then what they all digged free, it was amazing, And when you walk there, you really feel the history. And when we stood there and made a report for our community and for other people, then for us, this verse really had fulfilled. When you say, Notzrim will come to the mountains of Ephraim, because these mountains, especially the mountains of Shomron, of Samaria, they were desert for over 2,000 years because of the bad behavings of the tribes. They were kicked out. And then I don't know how many nations claim to have a thing on Israel. There were the Crusaders and the Ottomans and a lot of things. I think 8 different emperors.
Oh yeah, many.
Yeah. So, but these mountains, they just were desert, and I think in the time between Abraham. In the time of Abraham and Joshua, there was a kind of forest, or at least a lot of greens and plants. And I mean, if you see it today, these mountains, you cannot imagine how fruitful this land was. So, and I think we will come in the time where really the Ephraimites and all the tribes and also the Jews, they come back to their land and they start planting and watering, and they build the land. And you see this because right now in this messed up situation where we have the West Bank, you see the difference if you go through the land where the Jews live and they plant, and you have so many trees of fruits. It's incredible, and then you go to the Palestinian houses and it just looks like they did nothing. So you already see in this time the difference between the children of Israel and nations that kind of do not belong there. And when Christianity started, I also do not believe that the apostles wanted to create a new religion. It kind of just developed, and in the beginning, they really wanted to bring back also the lost tribes to their roots, to the Torah. They really wanted to spread the Torah. And this was so successful within the Roman Empire that at the Council of Nicaea in 325, they made this concile, and this was kind of the turning point where Christianity became the official religion. And they also started this Jesus worshipping thing. They changed the Shabbat to the Sunday, and there it became a complete Edom controlled religion. And I think because we have, since the beginning, we have these struggles with Jacob and with Esau from their day of birth until the end of times, both Judah and the lost tribes, they were under the influence of Edom in the last 2,000 years, because the Jews, they were so much persecuted by the Christian church, you cannot imagine. But as I said in the beginning, the most beautiful thing is that the Jews kept until this day their identity. They kept the Torah, they kept their culture, they kept their tradition, everything. And they said, okay, I will die, you can burn me, you can kill me, do whatever you want, but I will not forsake Hashem. So, but the tribes, they kind of were emerged in this whole Christianity thing. So from our perspective, if we look at the Europeans, and for us, especially to Germany, it's kind of a mix, like it's written, Ephraim kind of mixed with the people. And it's interesting that when the people started to translate the Greek version of the New Testament, there was this word for heathen, and they translated it into Diaductus. And Diaductus was called non-Jewish and became later the word for Deutsch, for German. So just from the language, the word of the German is the actual meaning of the New Testamental heathen. If you read Gentiles in the New Testament,
very interesting.
Actually a German. So, and I think this is for me. If you don't want to add anything, I would skip to the next topic.
Sure.
For me as a German, this is really important to address this, because while we think that we are really from Ephraim and we need to connect back to Jehudah, also has this clear parallels in the German culture. Because first of all the problems started when Ephraim went against Judah. So, and we see this a lot of times, that things that happen kind of repeat in the history, in the prophecy, sometimes in the same order, sometimes the way around, sometimes different, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times, but they kind of repeat. And for us, the Holocaust, what was a really terrible thing, was kind of I don't want to call it tikkun because it was not tikkun, but it was the same kind of situation that Ephraim kind of went against Judah. So the thing today is for still a lot of Jews, because I'm just 30 years old. I come from Germany. Before I'm doing this now for 8 years. Before that 8 years, I didn't have any connection to the Torah, to the Jewish people, to Israel. So I thought personally, because I'm still young and I was born 50 years after the end of World War II, I thought that a lot of problems had already been fixed. But when I came here to Israel, I had to see that still, if you say you're German, still many Jews have this kind of trauma, you know? And it's interesting that Germany and Israel, they also have no constitution. You know, the Germans, after they lost World War II, we are still under the law of the no, not the Besatzungsrecht. Occupation law. We are still under occupation law. So we are not free. We're still under the control of the Allies, especially under the United States of America. So the left that are in our government for decades, they don't mention this fact. They just go on with their leftist thing. But on the law, we're still under occupation law. So we don't have a constitution. We just have basic law, like in Israel. They also have just basic law, no real constitution. Then Germany was splitted for 40 years. So we had East Germany and we had West Germany. So we have also this kind of split in Israel where the British wanted to give the Jewish people with the Balfour Declaration the whole British mandate. Right. So from that, they gave them, in the end, 20%, and the whole British mandatory was only 1% of the whole Arab nation all over the place. Yeah. So we have now 20% from 1%, and then even this 20% with the UN separation declaration, they split this land into, Judea and Samaria, and they still want to have a claim, So all this, I think the most people that will watch this know about this fact, so I don't think we have to go deeper in this topic, but I just want to mention this parallels between Israel and Germany, and we also have this problem with the Muslims, because in Israel and with the Jews, the Muslims, it's clear, since the starting of the state of Israel, there is problems with the Arabs around that want to conquer Israel, that want to kill the Jews, from the river to the sea. And also in Germany, because the Germans did such a horrible thing, the Allies decided we have to switch the German mentality. So they started to bring in the Italian and the Greek, for a lot of buildings were destroyed and they needed to build up again. So they started with Greek and Italian guest workers. Then a bit later, when the people kind of were okay with these people, the Turkish came, and this was cooked, big, until 2015. Merkel had this great idea of open borders, and now all the Muslims are, especially in Germany, also in all of Europe, but there are different countries like Poland and Hungary. They are completely against it, and they just get them until they come to Germany. So we see in the United States with all the Mexicans and all the illegal people, they kind of have the same problems. So, and like I said, that we see this parallels of Edom, the Edomite exile, you know, the problems, the Jews had the problems on their own side, but also the tribes had their problems. We see also with the Muslims, with Ishmael, you know, it's not only that the Jews have the only problems with them, no, also the Europeans have problems with the Muslims. And the biggest problem of this whole confusion and mixed up thing is that you don't know really, are you an Israelite? Are you children of Jacob? Are you Amalekite? Are you Edomite? Are you something different? You know, but I think the main difference you can see what kind of person you are is the things you think and you decide. So for us, if we say, and I hope we will come also to this point, what we actually did to prove that we're on the right side, on the side of Torah and Israel, you also see, especially in the German government, how really they don't act as a Jacob, but they act as Amalek, you know, because they had this thing with the Holocaust and they stand for the camera and for the public and they say we stand with Israel, but in the end, all the money goes to the Palestinians and to the terrorists, and they support them with weapons and they support them with demonstrations. And so they just they're saying something, but they're doing something different, you know? So we have this really different people.
I think two points, if I can interject, just two things. One is regarding the point of the relationship between Ishmael and then you have Israel, you have Esav. What you find is that, you know, the Muslim worldview is different than the Christian and Jewish worldview. And Islam's goal, their stated goal, is to establish an international caliphate, essentially a global caliphate, and to have the whole world submit to Allah. I mean, Islam literally means submission. And I mean, they say this explicitly. That's their stated goal. You know, the Muslim kind of view is that either you're in the house of Islam or you're in the house of war. You know, whatever is not included in the realm of Islam is now the realm of harb, the sword, or jihad, you know. So Islam is inherently incompatible with anything else because it's their way or the highway. Judaism and Christianity is a lot more open to other ideas and ideologies. Judaism in particular does not expect you to be Jewish, right? Jews don't missionize. The Christians try to make everybody Christian. Muslims try to make everybody Muslim. Jews don't have any desire to make everybody Jewish. And you can be connected to Torah and God and as a non-Jew through the Noahide laws. There is a code for all of mankind. That said, Judaism is not an exclusive club. Anybody can join. A person could convert if they so choose. If they want to take on everything else, then they're welcome to do so. But we don't expect them to because it could be quite difficult and it's challenging. It's a big responsibility to bear that burden to be kind of God's representative on earth and to fulfill all of his laws. But at the very least, a person could be a Noahide. And that's enough for just any human being on a basic level to fulfill God's law and to be connected to God. And then if they so choose, they can take on more and take on all the mitzvot and halachot and convert to Judaism. So regarding what I was saying earlier, this idea of reconciliation between Jacob and Esav, it's kind of necessary if we see what's going on in the world today. Jews and Christians kind of have to work together because the opposite side is the Muslim, whatever you want to call it, the threat. Israel is the front lines of this battle. And if Islam finishes with Israel, who do you think is going to be next, right? It's just going to spread to the next one. Right now, all the focus is on Israel. Yeah, and Shabbat, Israel is holding it back.
On Shabbat, we take the Jews, and on Sunday, we get the Christians.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where that reconciliation is necessary, where Jews and Christians kind of have to work together to preserve our core values, because Jews and Christians agree on the core things, whereas with Islam, even though it's considered like an Abrahamic faith, it's in its own world. Jews and Christians agree on the same core set of scriptures, right? What Christians would call the Old Testament, what we call the Tanakh, we agree on that. We refer to God in essentially the same way. A lot of our prayers are the same. We recite Psalms, Tehillim. We have so much more in common. Whereas Islam has its own whole world. Islam does not accept the Torah. Islam has its own Quran. Islam has its own names for God. Islam has its own language. Islam has its own, it's, Arabic. Their divine language is Arabic, right? Jews and Christians agree that the divine language is Hebrew. The divine language, the language of the word of God, of creation, is Hebrew. So Jews and Christians are inherently two sides of the same coin. That's the twins, Yaakov and Esav. Ishmael is a distant relative, right? And so it's important to keep that in mind. And in terms of like what we can do, you mentioned all these political factors and refugees and borders. I mean, for people like you and I, the average person can't really do much about those bigger things, right? If the government's been infiltrated by the spirit of Amalek, there's very little you and I could probably do practically, like physically, but there's a lot we can do spiritually. Each of us has an incredible amount of spiritual power potential to affect these things. And that's where each of us has to really focus on, being connected to Hashem, fulfilling God's law. If it's for the Gentiles, it's the Noahide laws. If it's for the Jews, it's reconnecting to the Torah, all the Torah laws, fulfilling Torah laws, and prayer and meditation, and using the spiritual powers inherent within us to create ripples in the world and to make those changes. So what we do spiritually will ultimately have an effect politically, physically as well. So that should be our focus.
Yeah. So I want to end this point with the German identity, because I have a little article about this, just very, very short. It's called History Part 1, America's German Roots. Germans are the largest immigrant groups in the USA, and yet are the least visible. So I also have this graphic from the census of 2000, where the Americans counted their people, and you see this, the blue color is the
Yeah.
Germans. You have the purple is English, and you have African American, you have Dutch, you have a lot of where they originated, because there is actually no American beside maybe of the original Americans, the
Aboriginal
yeah,
Indian,
the native.
Native American. Yeah.
Yes. So, but America is kind of a place of freedom, because if you see Italian, Irish, Spanish, German, French, Finnic, English, Dutch, so they all came from Europe to flee from the bad influence of the Pope. So this was the actual history, how America was built, and we really see that the Germans, I don't think many people know that, but the Germans are really the biggest group in
Right.
in America. So we see this also in this graphic. So this in the middle, this whole territory, this is something that's called the Bible Belt, because you have the East, New York, and so on, where it said if you live too long at the East Coast, you're going to be too hard, but if you move to the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, you're going to be too soft. So you have also in America these two extremes, and in the middle, the people that have a lot of land, that's called the Bible Belt, because they're also very, very religious. And I also think the biggest group of supporters, especially for Donald Trump, in the vote, and in the article. In the article, it says, think it was just the first part, yes. There is virtually no other population group that has shaped the past of the USA quite as strongly as German immigrants, with almost 7 million of them making their way to the New World over the course of 4 centuries. Currently, 40 to 60 million Americans cite German as their primary origin and thus represent the largest immigrant group, even greater than those descended from Irish and Italians. German immigration to the USA began at the end of the 17th century when Germany was suffering from the after effects of the bloody religious conflict of the 30 Years' War, and Christian minorities were being persecuted. So we still have, we see again the big problem with Edom. Many farmers lived in poverty, their very existence threatened by failed harvest and land shortages. So many decided to leave for a country that appeared to offer both freedom and prosperity. That country was America. In 1683, a group of 13 Orthodox Quaker families from Krefeld left from New England, where they founded Germantown, the first closed German settlement, which is now a suburb of Philadelphia. So
yeah, you were pointing out for sure Germany had a massive role to play in the founding of America. You were pointing out similarities between Germany and Israel, but you'll find many more similarities between America and Israel, even
yes.
with, the tribes and the original 13 colonies. And just like the land of Israel was originally apportioned into 13 pieces, you had two pieces of Menashe and you have North and South Carolina or whatever,
Yes. Exactly.
So the similarities are really amazing. Even you see a lot of Hebrew in some of the earliest university emblems, and it used to be customary even in some of the America's first universities to give a commencement speech in Hebrew. A lot of the founding fathers saw themselves as a new Israel. A lot of the pilgrims that came across the ocean, like you were saying, they felt persecuted in Europe and they thought the church was Pharaoh and the Atlantic Ocean is the Red Sea, and they were crossing the Red Sea to America, which was their new promised land. And some of them even saw the natives as Canaanites. So there's definitely that Hebraic element embedded into the origins of America, and you kind of still see some of that influence trickle down to this day. So it's there, yeah. These patterns, these kind of spiritual patterns, these Torah blueprints you see replicated across time and place. Yeah.
Yeah, and America is kind of, I think, not the only, but the biggest ally of Israel. I mean, there are some small islands, that vote for Israel. Now Hungary, der Mila ist von Argentinien. For
Yeah, Arjun.
Argentina, I think even Italy, they started to become closer relations to Israel. But I mean, America accepted Israel's declaration of independence, I think, after 11 minutes. So
Yeah,
at point. And America was, and still is, beside maybe this, when the leftists took over, the biggest supporter of Israel. So,
absolutely.
and in that kind of context, I also wanted to give a little quick review to the history that the Germans also influenced America a lot. Their early presence among the new industrial also led to Germans becoming more mobile than virtually any other group. They were less tightly concentrated in individual regions than other immigrants and spread across the country, working as foremen in railway construction, for example. The image of those with German roots changed abruptly upon the outbreak of the First World War. All of a sudden, they came under pressure to cast off their ethnic identity. Full-blown anti-German hysteria meant that the German language and culture were ostracized.
Ostracized. Yeah.
Thus, a process was set in motion which made German immigrants unique among all the major immigrant groups, and which was further fueled by the Second World War. The almost complete erosion of their original identity. no other group lost its public visibility to quite the extent to the German Americans during the course of the 20th century. So, and this, we kind of have a really German identity crisis for the last 2000 years, you know, because the place where Germany now is was for 1000 years called the Holy Roman Empire. And it was not like France or Britain, you know, they had a king, they had a territory, they had their own culture and own mentality of identity. The Germans never had, because they were split in a lot of tribes and then in a lot of graves, not graves, not a king, but a baron, and you know, all these as aristocrats, you know.
Right. Yeah, listen, Germany was only reunified in the end of the 19th century, you know, that during that time of nationalism. Before that, there was never really like
Exactly.
Germany with the capital G that referred to it was never unified. It was hundreds of different principalities and kingdoms and states, you know. And before the leading one was Prussia, and you know all. So Germany as an entity is actually a fairly new invention that only begins in the late 19th century, you know.
And it was
Uh,
only a short time, you know, because they just found their own identity, they found their own culture. They said, okay, we have a common language, German, and then World War One, World War Two, and then like I said in the beginning, this was too much, you know, too much of German. They kind of had, it's like a little kid that never had ice cream, you know, and the first time you give him an ice, and then the child wants nothing else than ice cream, you know. So give the
right.
Germans an identity, and they kind of make it to the extreme that now the German identity that actually just existed for 30 years, 40 years, should be the most beautiful thing overall, you know, in the world. So, and then the Americans, with kind of left things inside, kind of wanted to again destroy the German identity, until a point where, you know, German today is told not to be proud to be a German. So it's different here in Israel. You know, we see everywhere, we see flags. We have this kind of proud to be a Jew, proud to be to have the land of Israel finally after 2000 years. So it's a complete different story. And as I said, from our perspective, if we believe that a really, really big amount of Germans and Europeans are really physical descendants of the tribes, then maybe God made it that way that we have to kind of search for our identity, because there's no kind of German identity. And as I said, it's in the New Testament, the heathen identity. So we need to still find our identity in the world. And I think this will become more, a lot of, every day more people will wake up, every day more people will connect to the Torah, every day more people will connect to the Jews and to Israel. And I think we're in a process that just is in the beginning.
That's right. Yeah, God willing, I think we're seeing major transformations in the world, major shifts. And hopefully to conclude with where we started, you know, we have a whole bunch of these prophecies about the end of days. They've essentially all come true already, and it looks like we're right at the finish line. And so hopefully we'll see that transition completed very soon. And then we'll see all these prophecies realized, that nations will beat their swords into plowshares. There will be no more war. And the whole world will know God. Bayom Hahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmo echad, right? God, like Zechariah says, the whole world will recognize Hashem as the one true God and live under the banner of Hashem. And the third temple will be rebuilt, and it'll be an international house of prayer, and all the peoples of the world can unite, you know, under God, and live a proper, healthy, kind of moral, peaceful, prosperous lifestyle.
Yes.
You know, hopefully we get to that very soon.
So to conclude this little introduction, to go to the main point of the meeting, the Geulah mindset. So this is our website, zion577.com. And this is a short overview what we did. So what we actually did, because we're not just talking and thinking and believing something like most of the Christians do. We actually did something. So we started here, as I said, in the Jubilee year 5777. This is our sign. And we started kind of to be a community. So then we said we need a card. So we developed this really beautiful Effie card. And I think Donald Trump is the most famous American with German blood, you know? So his father's father is a real German. So he also said this. He said this twice. He said this when Merkel was with him. And she kind of looked at him like, she didn't have a really good relationship with him. But we said, I know there are all these rabbis that go out and say Trump is the part of Edom that makes tshuva, but we really think that also Donald Trump is a real Israelite. So that's why we also kind of made him here in the card. But everyone that connects with us can have this card, because our main goal is to really collect all the lost souls and to give them perspective. So this we already have seen here in the background. This is our symbol. Short story to the symbol. There's an German organization that connects kind of Germany with Israel. And the logo was half an eagle and half a menorah. So, and in the beginning we used this logo because we said this is the if you read Jeremiah 31 or Ezekiel, you know, Ephraim and Judah coming together. This is the most visible thing you can make out of these words. So, and we used it for a good purpose, but then we kind of got problems because of the copyright, you know. And then we said, okay, what do we want with half a menorah, with half an eagle? It's just half. But in the end, we have to bring them together. And that's why we said Germany, the emblem is an eagle. So, but Germany is on a really, really bad way, down, up. If you see in economy, in politics. So if you are into German politics, it's horrible. So we said the eagle will die, but the phoenix will arise with the light of the Torah. So the Torah is what will kind of save Germany. So this was the idea of the phoenix with the menorah inside the phoenix. So, and this is also the story where we actually came to this meeting, because in one shiur you said there's a connection between the cave of Tzedekah, I think.
Right, yeah. Zedekiah's cave in Jerusalem, yeah.
And the Moshiach. So this is an original picture from that cave where we visited once on March 4. And we just put our phoenix on the stone. So if you want to visit sometimes, you can check if it's still there.
I was there this past January, but I didn't notice I didn't notice the fee. It's a big place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, and this is kind of our best invention ever. So this is the Machatzit shekel, because it's a mitzvah to give the Machatzit shekel every year to count the people of Israel, because it's not it's against the law to count people by numbers. So you have this shekel. It's half a shekel. It's 7.77 gram of silver. So in this picture, you see the first edition. We have a zoom here. Maybe I can. No, it's not. Okay. So, but we already have 4 editions now. So we also minted it by ourselves. And we're also working with the Sanhedrin initiative. So this is the embassy. This is a picture of the embassy where I'm right now sitting. So this is a Chabad guy, Rabbi Yosef Edery from Katzrin. So he's the actual reason why we came to Katzrin. And his main goal is to establish the Sanhedrin. So you also talked in the past, I think, a lot of times about the Sanhedrin, right?
I've written about it. Yeah, I've written an essay about the history of the Sanhedrin, what happened to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So his main goal is to really reestablish the Sanhedrin, because right now we really don't have a Sanhedrin. We still have this evil Supreme Court, and there's a need for a Sanhedrin. So
Yeah, listen, it's all part of the same messianic prophecies, right? Just like we expect the third temple to be rebuilt, we expect the Davidic dynasty to be reestablished and the Sanhedrin to be reestablished. So it's all going to come together, and hopefully we'll see it happen very soon. So maybe we can end with that. Let's conclude with a wish that all these things are successful and that we see the Geulah realized shortly. God
yes.
willing. Okay.
Do you have something to add from a Jewish perspective? What do you think is the most important thing to actually change this mindset from Galut to Geulah from a Jewish perspective?
So I think we just have to recognize that, from a Jewish perspective, we're very much tradition is very important to us. And it's all about Masorah and having your tradition and doing things like we've always done them. But on the other hand, also recognizing that Geulah will require a massive change. I mean, the world is shifting in a huge way. So if we're going to have a temple, if we're going to have a Sanhedrin, then we can't do things the same way we've always done them. So I think the Geulah mindset requires a bit of an open mind. And we have to reclaim, restore a lot of the old practices that have been forgotten or suppressed or that we couldn't do because of the exile. And we have to recognize that we're not in exile anymore. We have the land of Israel and we have Jewish sovereignty in our own land, and we're not victims and just victims anymore. We actually have strength and we have the ability to take care of ourselves, to grow our own food. And I'll conclude with this, that the Talmud actually says, how do you know? I've said this many times, but how do you know you're in the times of Geulah? Ein ketz meguleh mizeh. There's no greater sign of the redemption than the land of Israel giving forth its fruits once again, as we spoke about earlier, that the land has been resurrected, is revived, is flourishing once more. And Israel's producing an abundance of fruits, which has never happened, hasn't happened for sure in the past 2,000 years, and is now even exporting fruits to the world. And you can get Israeli produce here in Canada, in Australia, wherever you are. That's never, of course, never happened in history. So we know we're in the times of Geulah, and so we have to be open to the shift. We have to allow the transition, this natural, to occur naturally and not to resist it.
Yes, yes. So it was interesting. I don't know if you know this, but I was once in Ireland, and they have this cheddar cheese. It's especially for England or Ireland. And then I came back to Germany, and there was this cheddar cheese in the supermarkets. So I don't know if I didn't mention it before, or just came the time. Then I went to Iceland. They had the skier. Then I came back to Germany, and there was the skier in the.
Right, right.
Now my parents visited me this year in February, the first time that they both were in Israel. And now they come back and they have, I forgot what it was, maybe cherries or something. But my mother said in the supermarket they now sell Israeli products. So as you
Beautiful, beautiful.
said,
Exactly. Right.
even
Let
in
me
Germany.
see. Amazing. Another sign that we're in the redemption. Amazing. Okay. Thank you, Alex. It was great having this conversation with you.
So it seems we don't have any questions. No one wants to
Yeah,
say.
people can reach out if they like. They can send me an email and happy to address questions that way as well.
Ja, können Sie melden. Okay, perfect. Then I will, I thank you. Thank you very much for
Of course.
this wonderful conversation. I hope maybe
Absolutely.
we have in the future the chance maybe to repeat it or have some major changes.
Yeah, God
And
willing.
thank you. And
My pleasure.
thank you for all the everyone who watches this now and get in contact with us, get in contact with Efraim Palvanow, and we wish we have a fast Geulah. Thank you.
Amen.
My life be like